The message from the outer colonies was brief, disjointed, and unmistakable in its terror. They're not here to conquer. They're here to erase us. The transmission ended with a chilling silence that reverberated across every military channel and civilian network. The human race had never faced an enemy like this. The terror was raw, palpable, and it spread like wildfire through every corner of Earth. In the command center of the United Nations Defense Force, UNDF, General Sarah Lucan stood still as the data stream played over and over again on the holographic screen. Her sharp features remained impassive, but her mind raced. The galaxy had never seen a war like this before. Humanity had made its mark in the stars, spreading out to distant colonies, building alliances, and earning respect from species far more advanced than themselves. But now, something far darker was closing in. "We've lost contact with the Vesta Prime station," said Captain Thomas Reed, his voice tight with frustration as he pored over his monitors. "And all comms from the outer colonies are completely gone. No distress signals, no escape pods. Just silence." Lucan's eyes flickered briefly to the screen, where the black void of space seemed to mock them. "What do we know about these invaders?" she asked, her voice steady, but carrying an edge of steel. Reed paused, tapping into the intelligence reports. "The Vorthani Dominion, Mom. Their fleet is vast, and their technology is far beyond anything we've encountered. Their ships, they don't just invade. They erase. Whole colonies wiped off the map in minutes. No survivors. No traces." A chill ran through the room. The UNDF had prepared for everything. Alien diplomacy, peace treaties, even full-scale war. But an enemy that came to erase. Lucan moved to the central command table, her mind working with cold precision. "We need to find out what happened to Vesta Prime. Send a recon ship immediately, and rally every available fleet. Prepare for the worst. If they're here to destroy us, we have no choice but to retaliate with everything we've got." Her orders rang with authority, but even she couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in her mind. Humanity's strength had always been its resilience, its adaptability. But if the Vorthani truly could erase entire colonies, what chance did they stand against such annihilation? The screen flashed, and a new transmission appeared. This one from a civilian freighter in deep space. The message was desperate, panicked. The voice on the other end was distorted by static, but it was clear enough. "Please, you have to stop them. The Vorthani are here. They..." The transmission cut off suddenly, leaving only a high-pitched hum in its wake. Lucan's fist clenched. She had seen countless battles, but this was something entirely different. This wasn't just a war of tactics. This was a war against oblivion itself. And the worst part, she had no idea if humanity could win. "Prep the fleet for a strike at the Vorthani's last known coordinates," she ordered, voice unwavering despite the storm inside her. "And broadcast this message to every channel. Earth will not surrender. We will make them understand why this planet still matters." She turned toward the view of Earth outside the command center's glass walls, her eyes narrowing as the planet turned slowly beneath the distant glow of the sun. "They may think they can erase us, but they've never faced the terror of a species that refuses to die." The first wave hit Earth in the dead of night, an ominous prelude to the destruction that followed. In the skies over every major city, Vorthani warships descended like harbingers of the apocalypse. Their ships, sleek and impossibly fast, burned through Earth's atmosphere with a terrifying precision. No alarms had been raised, no advance warning, just the thunderous roar of engines as colossal shadows eclipsed the moon. General Sarah Lucan stood on the balcony of the United Nations Command Complex, the city of New York sprawled beneath her. The night sky was alive with flashes of fire, a reflection of the hell unleashed upon the world. Every communication channel blared with panicked messages, but none could offer a solution. Cities fell. The first major targets were the world's most fortified defense zones: Tokyo, London, Moscow. The Vorthani struck them all in a brutal, coordinated attack. In New York, the streets were a sea of chaos. Buildings crumbled under the bombardment, and civilians fled in every direction, desperate to survive. A loud explosion echoed through the night air, followed by the ominous hum of alien engines overhead. People looked up, faces twisted in disbelief, as the Vortheni ships loomed over them like an impenetrable wall. Lucan's eyes remained cold, scanning the images coming in from all angles. Her mind worked at a pace far beyond the fear and uncertainty rippling across the globe. Earth had lost its major cities, but not its will. She'd seen the kind of devastation that could tear apart the human spirit, but this was different. This was war on a level humanity had never encountered. And yet it was precisely this kind of hopelessness that fueled the fire inside her. "Ma'am," Reed's voice crackled over the comms, pulling her from her thoughts. "We're getting reports from every major city, casualties in the millions. But there's something odd. The Vortheni aren't just bombing targets. They're enslaving survivors. We're seeing evidence of their forces rounding up civilians, transporting them off-world. They're not exterminating us entirely. Not yet." Lucan clenched her jaw. The message was clear. Earth wasn't being wiped out in a traditional military sense. The Vortheni were erasing humanity's presence, body and soul. They didn't just destroy. They assimilated, repurposing everything they encountered into their endless war machine. Entire populations were being siphoned away, their genetic material harvested, their minds indoctrinated. "This is not just a war of conquest," Lucan murmured, eyes narrowing. "It's a war of annihilation, not of bodies, but of our very essence." "We need to act fast," Reed said. "The remaining military forces are in disarray. We don't have the time to rebuild." Lucan didn't hesitate. "No, we won't rebuild. Not yet." She turned from the glass wall, facing her officers, her voice a sharp command. "We strike back. We hit them where they don't expect us. Mobilize the fleet. Prepare every warship we have. We can't fight them on their terms. We'll fight on ours." "But General," Captain Rios interrupted, her face pale with the weight of the destruction. "We've lost too much. Our orbital defenses are gone. We don't even know how many fleets they've got in orbit." Lucan met her gaze, unwavering. "Then we use what we have. If we can't stop them with force, we'll make them fear us. We'll give them a war they didn't prepare for." The room fell silent as Lucan's words sank in. The terror of the last few hours still clung to everyone in the command room, but the steely resolve in Lucan's voice began to kindle a spark in their hearts. The fight wasn't over. The Vortheni had made one fatal miscalculation. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for vengeance. "We have no choice now," Lucan said, her gaze turning toward the shattered skyline. "We'll turn this world into a weapon. And when they come for us again, they will find that we're not the prey. We're the hunters." As Earth's cities smoldered in the wake of the Vortheni onslaught, humanity's greatest hope for survival lay buried beneath layers of secrecy, locked away in classified archives long thought irrelevant. The Terran military had prepared for every eventuality: an alien diplomatic crisis, a trade dispute, even full-scale invasion. But they had never expected this kind of war, and the weapons they had kept hidden for so long were the only thing left capable of facing such an overwhelming threat. General Lucan stood before a massive steel door, the kind designed to withstand nuclear detonation, her breath steady despite the weight of the moment. Behind this door was Earth's final gamble, the remnants of a project thought too dangerous even for its own creators. Project Erebus, Lucan muttered under her breath, the name almost a curse. The project had been developed during the height of the Cold War, when tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union were at their peak. Earth's military leaders had known that an invasion could come from anywhere, and so they began developing weapons, not just for defense, but for the extinction of entire species if necessary. With the order given, the heavy door groaned open, revealing a vast, dimly lit chamber filled with rows of dormant machinery. At the far end, A containment chamber stood, sealed and untouched for decades. Inside, a row of transparent vials stood under a bed of ice. Each contained a nanite swarm, a microscopic army capable of devouring entire ecosystems in a matter of days, converting them into a fertile breeding ground for more of the same. It had been designed as a planet sterilizer, a last resort to protect Earth from a hostile takeover by erasing an invader's ability to survive. But now, it would be repurposed as a weapon of vengeance. "Activate EREBUS," Lucan ordered, her voice cold with resolve. "We don't have the luxury of time." A team of scientists, reluctant yet determined, stepped forward, their fingers trembling as they began to work on the dormant machinery. Lucan's thoughts were a whirlwind, her mind constantly returning to the same chilling question: would it be enough? The Vorthani Dominion's technology was decades, possibly centuries, ahead of humanity's. They had conquered and erased entire civilizations, and yet this weapon, this horrific and ancient relic, was the only thing capable of bringing them to their knees. A faint hum filled the room, a low-frequency vibration that rippled through the chamber as the nanite swarms began to stir. The system's interface flickered to life. Images of vast landscapes, forests, oceans, and cities appeared on the screen as the nanites were calibrated for deployment. But there was something far darker lurking beneath the surface of this weapon. The swarm was not just designed to sterilize. It had an evolutionary potential. It could learn, adapt, and, more terrifying still, it could infect alien life. "General," one of the scientists said, voice hesitant, "this weapon wasn't meant for a species like the Vorthani. The nanites can alter DNA, but they will also alter the environment. Once activated, there's no controlling it. We're talking about a planetary-scale catastrophe." Lucan's expression was unreadable. "Then we'll adapt. The Vorthani want to erase us. It's time we show them what true erasure looks like." The sound of the nanite swarm's activation was almost drowned out by the droning hum of the machinery, but there was no mistaking the danger in the air. In the chamber before her, the swarm began to take shape, a living, breathing organism capable of not just destruction, but complete transformation. Lucan's gaze hardened as she watched the process unfold. She was about to unleash hell itself. But the Vorthani had already declared war on humanity's very existence. There was no going back. "Prepare for immediate deployment," Lucan commanded. "Target every Vorthani-controlled colony within range. We hit them hard, and we hit them first." The team scrambled to comply, and as Lucan watched the operation unfold, her thoughts raced. It was a terrifying moment, knowing that the weapon they had unlocked could very well lead to the extinction of more than just the Vorthani. But there was no other option. The fight for survival had come down to this: humanity's fight to not just resist, but to obliterate. She turned toward the door, eyes steely with purpose. "We give them fear," she muttered. "Fear they will never forget." The Vorthani Dominion had underestimated humanity's resilience. They had arrived with overwhelming firepower, certain their advanced fleets and superior tactics would crush any resistance. What they hadn't anticipated was the ferocity of human determination, or how far Earth's warriors were willing to go to stop them. In the dense jungles of the Amazon basin, Captain Maria Rios and her team of survivors had found their battlefield. Earth's elite military forces had been scattered, their fleets shattered, and the global defense networks were in tatters. But in the wilderness of Brazil, Rios had assembled a small band of guerrilla fighters, soldiers, civilians, and scientists who had one goal in mind: to strike back at the heart of the Vorthani invasion. The Vorthani weren't just invaders. They were predators, and for the first time, they were facing prey that fought back with the same viciousness. "Rios, this is Bravo Team. We're in position. Ready when you are." A gruff voice crackled through the comms. The squad's movements had been nearly silent, their weapons hidden under camouflage, and they had avoided detection by using the natural terrain to their advantage. The Vorthani's advanced scanners were excellent for large-scale operations, But in the thick, uncharted jungles, they were nearly blind. Rios crouched low, her fingers brushing against the dirt. Her mind raced, every sense on high alert. They had one chance. If they failed, the Vortheni would find them and erase them just like every other colony. But if they succeeded, well, the Vortheni had underestimated the human spirit. "Activate the traps," she ordered, "and make sure they don't see it coming." The Vortheni were getting bolder now. Their ground forces, monstrous humanoid soldiers with heavily augmented exoskeletons, marched deeper into the jungle, unaware that they were being tracked by Earth's most unlikely warriors. The plan was simple: ambush the Vortheni supply convoy, capture as many prisoners as possible, and make them pay for every life lost. The first explosion rocked the jungle. A barrage of makeshift explosives, carefully planted in the trees, detonated with brutal precision. The Vortheni soldiers were thrown into disarray, their advanced armor shaking under the force of the blast. The humans had rigged the landscape, turning the very environment into a weapon. Earth's fighters didn't have superior firepower, but they had ingenuity, and that would be enough. Rios charged forward, her rifle raised. "Move, move, move," she shouted to her team. The squad scattered into the smoke and debris, attacking with the precision of a well-rehearsed dance. The Vortheni were disoriented, struggling to regain their footing in the chaotic environment. In this jungle, their advanced tech was a liability. Too bulky, too loud. It made them easy targets. A Vortheni soldier, attempting to recalibrate his targeting system, turned just in time to see a spear of fire erupt from the underbrush. One of Rios's team, a former engineer-turned-soldier, had crafted a makeshift flamethrower from scavenged parts. The alien warrior screamed as the flames consumed his exoskeleton, and he crumpled to the ground in agony. Rios moved with deadly grace, each step purposeful. Her squad had already secured the supply convoy, and the captured Vortheni were bound, their weapons confiscated. The humans didn't need prisoners. They needed information, and they had learned that the Vortheni were ruthless, but not all-knowing. There were gaps in their intelligence, weaknesses to exploit. In the distance, the unmistakable hum of a Vortheni dropship filled the air. The sound sent a shiver through Rios's spine. The Vortheni were quick to retaliate, and if the dropship arrived before they could escape, this operation would be their last. "Get to the extraction point," Rios barked, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "We've done enough damage. Let's move." Her team vanished into the jungle's undergrowth, the captured prisoners in tow. Behind them, the Vortheni were beginning to regroup, their soldiers shouting orders into their comms. It wouldn't be long before they retaliated in force. As Rios pushed forward, a grim thought tugged at the edges of her mind. This was just the beginning. Their success here would not go unnoticed, and the Vortheni would learn from their mistake. But it didn't matter. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had tasted victory. It was small, fleeting, but it was a victory nonetheless. They would strike again. And this time, the Vortheni would know fear. The world was burning. Earth's cities had fallen, and the Vortheni had begun their systematic eradication of humanity's presence in the stars. But amidst the chaos, one bastion of defiance remained: the underground fortress of Atlas Base, hidden beneath the frozen plains of Antarctica. Here, humanity's last hope resided, the remnants of the UNDS military command and the scientists who had awakened Project Erebus. Atlas Base was humanity's final stand. But even here, the ground was shaking with the force of incoming destruction. The Vortheni knew where they were. They had always known. General Lucan stood in the operations room, her eyes scanning the incoming data streams, the cold of Antarctica pressing against the thick walls of the base. Outside, a blizzard raged, masking the movements of the alien fleets, but it wouldn't be long before they'd be upon them. The Vortheni had already begun their descent into the continent, their ships carving through the ice like knives. "How much time do we have?" Lucan asked, her voice steady despite the grim reality hanging over them. "Not much," replied Captain Reed, his face grim as he reviewed the reports. "They're preparing a full orbital bombardment. We've managed to scramble some interference on their comms, but it won't last long. We're on the clock." Lucan's jaw tightened. She had spent years preparing for the day humanity would have to fight for its survival, but even she hadn't foreseen a battle on this scale. The Vorthani had turned their invasion into a crusade of annihilation. They weren't just here to conquer. They wanted to erase every trace of human existence. "Then we need to move," Lucan said, turning away from the screen. "Activate the EREBUS protocol. It's time to show them what happens when you force a species to fight for its survival." As the final steps to deploy Project EREBUS began, Lucan felt a deep unease settle in her chest. The weapon they had unlocked was humanity's last card, but it was also a double-edged sword. EREBUS was designed to adapt, to infect, to consume. And once it was unleashed, there would be no controlling it. The Vorthani would suffer, but humanity could not predict what would become of their world once the Nanites began their work. "We're almost ready," said Dr. Miranda Lee, the lead scientist behind EREBUS, her voice strained with the weight of what they were about to unleash. "Once the signal is sent, the Nanites will begin their spread. It'll be unstoppable. I hope you're prepared for the consequences, General." Lucan nodded, her expression unreadable. "We have no choice. It's us or them. We fight with everything we have." As the final sequence of EREBUS was initiated, the ground beneath Atlas Base rumbled. The Vorthani were closing in faster than anticipated. Within minutes, their massive warships would be above them, and their ground forces, already preparing for a planetary siege, would soon descend. "We're under attack," one of the technicians shouted, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Vorthani forces are deploying ground troops. They're already in the outer perimeter." "Deploy the defense systems," Lucan ordered, her voice sharp. "Prepare to engage at all fronts. This is it. We stand here, or we die here." The base's internal alarms began to wail as the first wave of Vorthani assault troops breached the outer defenses. Lucan's mind sharpened. She had fought wars before, but never like this. The Vorthani weren't just soldiers. They were predators, creatures of instinct, brutal and efficient, capable of adapting in ways that made them nearly impossible to outmaneuver. "Send the message to every remaining human stronghold," Lucan said, walking toward the command center's main terminal. "Tell them what we've done. We've taken the first step. Earth's last hope lies with them now." Her fingers flew across the interface, sending the signal to every corner of the world, every remnant of resistance still clinging to the hope that humanity could survive. And then, as if the world itself was holding its breath, the ground beneath Atlas Base shook again. But this time, it wasn't just an invasion. It was the beginning of something darker, something more terrifying. The nanites of EREBUS had begun their spread. The first signs of the nanite swarms effect were subtle, almost imperceptible. At first, the Vorthani soldiers outside Atlas Base continued their assault, their weapons firing relentlessly as they advanced on the human stronghold. The Vorthani, accustomed to relentless conquest, had no idea what was coming for them. Then, the air began to hum with an unnatural frequency. A faint buzz filled the atmosphere as EREBUS, humanity's last-ditch weapon, activated across the planet. On the surface of Earth, microscopic nanites began to devour everything in their path. The forests, the plains, even the oceans, began to pulse with a life of their own as the nanites adapted to their environment, consuming organic matter, breaking it down, and rapidly multiplying. In the chaos of the Vorthani assault, it was only after the first few moments that they realized something had gone wrong. The first Vorthani soldier fell, not from a bullet or blast, but from the inside out. His armor ruptured as the nanites infiltrated his body, consuming his cells and rewriting his DNA. His screams echoed across the battlefield as he collapsed, his body no longer his own. "Sir, we've lost contact with the front lines," a Vorthani officer shouted into his comm unit, his voice rising in alarm. The nanites were not just spreading across the planet. They were evolving. Humanity had long been aware of the adaptability of the Erebus nanites, but now the world was witnessing their terrifying potential. With every new biological structure they encountered, the nanites learned, modified their approach, and became even more efficient. The Vorthani soldiers, once towering invaders, began to crumble, their bodies overwhelmed by the very technology that had once been their greatest asset. In Atlas Base, General Lucan watched the data feed in stunned silence, the weight of the decision sinking deeper into her chest with every passing second. The screen before her flickered, showing images of Vorthani soldiers collapsing in agony. It was working. Too well. "We can't stop it, General," Dr. Miranda Lee called out, her voice rising in panic. "The nanites are too far advanced. Once they reach the Vorthani central processing stations, we'll lose control completely. They're rewriting the entire ecosystem. At this rate, the Vorthani won't just be defeated. They'll be completely absorbed into the nanite collective." Lucan's gaze hardened. The devastation they had unleashed was now spiraling out of control. But there was no stopping it. Not now. "We've made our choice," she said, her voice cold, almost mechanical. "We fight, or we perish." Outside the base, the ground was beginning to turn to sludge. The once pristine snow and ice of Antarctica melted under the intensity of the nanites' hunger. Towering Vorthani warships in orbit began to flicker and lose power. Their ships, designed to conquer entire planets, were now falling victim to the very forces of nature they had hoped to dominate. One of the Vorthani commanders, observing the scene from above, let out a garbled cry of disbelief. His ship had been partially infected by the nanites, its systems corrupted by the unseen enemy. "Fall back. We need to regroup," he ordered, but it was already too late. Lucan turned to the room's windows, where outside, massive storms began to churn across the planet's surface. The nanites were now spreading across every major Vorthani colony, every ship, and even the infected soldiers themselves. The Vorthani were in a panic. They had no defense against this. Their high-tech exoskeletons and bioenhancements had been rendered obsolete, their very existence undermined by the relentless swarm. "General," Reed said, his voice tight, "we've just received word from Earth's survivors. Some are reporting that the nanites are not just killing the Vorthani. They're transforming the land, the atmosphere. We're watching entire ecosystems evolve at an accelerated rate. It's spreading faster than we anticipated." Lucan's fists clenched. She knew the cost. Humanity had taken its stand, but there would be consequences. Earth was changing in ways they couldn't predict, becoming something new, something dangerous. "We've triggered the beginning of something no one can control," Lucan murmured, watching as the last remnants of the Vorthani forces vanish, overtaken by the nanite swarm. "But it's humanity's future now. We may have lost everything, but the Vorthani will never take this planet again." The dust had barely settled before the consequences of humanity's victory began to reveal themselves in all their terrifying scope. Earth was no longer the planet it had once been. The sky, once a familiar blue, had taken on a sickly greenish hue as the nanites spread, transforming the atmosphere and the ecosystems. The very fabric of life was beginning to unravel, twisted by the genetic rewriting of Erebus. General Lucan stood at the front of Atlas Base, her eyes scanning the horizon through a reinforced glass wall. The Earth she had sworn to protect was now an alien world, its surface a battleground where humanity and nature were locked in an uncertain war. The Vorthani had been wiped out, but at what cost? "We've done it," Reed said, his voice devoid of triumph. "The Vorthani are gone. The swarm, it's already spreading through their fleets. There's no more resistance." But Lucan knew better than to celebrate. The Vorthani might be gone, but what had replaced them was far more insidious. A new Earth, one reshaped by forces they couldn't yet control. The nanites had begun to evolve the very terrain, the climate, and even the species they had encountered. In some areas, entire forests had sprouted overnight, but these were not Earth's trees. These were monstrous, mutated versions, vast, twisting spires of organic matter that reached skyward like jagged bones. Do we have any idea what the nanites are doing to the atmosphere? Lucan asked, turning to Dr. Miranda Lee, who had been monitoring the situation from the science console. Dr. Lee's face was pale as she sifted through streams of data. The nanites are not just consuming biomass, she said, her voice trembling. They're altering the atmospheric composition. It's as if they're terraforming the planet, changing it to suit their own survival. The oxygen levels are fluctuating. If this keeps up, humans won't be able to breathe in certain regions. We're facing a new climate, one that we can't predict. It's not just a war anymore. It's evolution on an accelerated scale. The room fell silent as the enormity of their actions settled over them. Humanity had fought for survival, but they had inadvertently triggered a new kind of warfare, one between the past and the future of Earth itself. The planet was transforming, evolving into something neither human nor alien, but something born of a convergence of both. This is what they meant when they said no one could survive the Erebus protocol, Dr. Lee continued, her voice barely above a whisper. The nanites, they adapt, they integrate, and they spread. They're rewriting all of Earth's biological systems. What we see outside is just the beginning. Lucan clenched her jaw, trying to steady herself. We can't go back. The Vorthani may be gone, but the battle for Earth is just beginning. But outside, the once pure silence of Antarctica was broken by the sound of distant rumbling. The ground beneath Atlas Base shifting and cracking, as if the planet itself was awakening. Lucan's eyes widened. The nanites weren't just altering the surface. They were breaking it apart. The base's walls trembled, and alarms began to blare. General, you need to see this, Reed called out, rushing toward the observation deck. Lucan's heart sank as she joined him, gazing out across the landscape. What had once been solid ice was now a twisting mass of bioorganic matter, its forms moving and pulsing with unnatural rhythm. The ground beneath them buckled, and from the fissures, tendrils of alien vegetation began to crawl upward, crawling across the ice in all directions. The nanites are growing the planet, Lucan muttered. They're making Earth into something else. Reed's voice cracked with disbelief. It's alive, General. The planet itself, it's alive. Just then, the sky began to darken. The large mass, high above the base, formed into a cloud that seemed to pulse with an unholy energy. Lightning arced across the sky, but instead of the familiar blue-white, the lightning was a sickly green, laced with strange patterns that had never been seen before on Earth. The horizon was unforgiving now. Earth had been reshaped, reborn as something neither human nor alien could have foreseen. Lucan could feel the change, not just in the world around her, but in herself. The war was far from over. They had won the battle, but the planet's future was uncertain. And as she gazed into the unknown, she knew that the fight for humanity's survival was now a war against the very world they had once called home. The world was no longer a place that could be called home. Lucan stood at the precipice of humanity's future, her boots planted firmly on the edge of the frozen cliffside that once marked the boundaries of Atlas Base. But now, looking out across the landscape, it seemed as if the planet had given birth to something entirely different. The mountains in the distance had risen higher, their peaks now twisted, covered in strange, metallic-like foliage. Oceans had turned into strange, swirling masses, with patches of bioluminescent growths that shimmered eerily under the dim green sky. Earth was no longer the planet they had known. It was a living, breathing organism of its own. General, Reed's voice came from behind her, cutting through the silence. It's starting to stabilize. The nanites, they're no longer spreading uncontrollably. They've created something. It's almost like a new biosphere. Lucan turned, her face hard. That doesn't mean we're safe. It just means the war is over. Earth might be transforming, but we haven't even begun to understand what that means for us. The first wave of survivors from the other global strongholds had arrived, and they too were in disbelief. Humanity had fought back against the Vorthani. But in doing so, they had unleashed something that would change their very identity. The nanites, while devastating, had altered the Earth in ways no one had expected. The atmosphere was still unstable, the planet's ecosystems wildly unpredictable, and the once advanced technology of the Vorthani was now mingled with the alien evolution that had taken root in Earth's soil. "We don't know what kind of future we have left," Dr. Miranda Lee said, joining them, her face pale but resolute. "The nanites are still evolving. What if they start taking over the rest of humanity? What if they continue rewriting us, just like they did the Vorthani? We don't have time to wonder what if," Lucan responded, the weight of their situation pressing heavily on her shoulders. "We have to survive in this new world. We rebuild, adapt, and make Earth our home again. We'll face whatever comes next, together." But deep down, Lucan understood the cost of their survival. The Vorthani threat had been eradicated, but humanity had become something different in the process. The nanites had integrated with their environment in ways no one could predict. Some survivors had begun reporting strange side effects, changes in their biology. DNA was mutating at a rapid pace, and some people had begun to show heightened abilities, enhanced senses, strength, and even abilities that bordered on the supernatural. It was as though the nanites were rewriting their very nature, and there was no telling where this new evolution would take them. "General, we've been getting reports," Reed said. "A few of the remaining human settlements are starting to form alliances. Some of the survivors have learned to control aspects of this new ecosystem. They've begun building, integrating, and surviving in ways we never thought possible. There's a faction forming. People who believe humanity needs to coexist with what we've created here. They call themselves the New Dawn." Lucan's heart ached as she heard the words. The New Dawn. It was a promise that they could rebuild, a flicker of hope that humanity might thrive again, even in the face of overwhelming change. But she couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. The victory over the Vorthani had been costly, and they had no idea what the future would hold in this transformed world. "I'll lead them," Lucan said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the alien sky stretched endlessly. "I'll lead them into this new world, no matter what it takes. We'll adapt, we'll survive, and we'll become something stronger than we ever were before." As she spoke, the first rays of a strange new dawn broke over the horizon, casting the transformed land in an ethereal glow. The planet was no longer the Earth of old. It was a place where humanity, the Vorthani, and the nanites had left their mark. It was a new beginning, born of struggle, survival, and the unyielding will to endure. And as Lucan watched the light stretch across the world, she knew that Earth was no longer just humanity's home. It was a living, evolving testament to their victory, and a constant reminder of the price they had paid.